Hi friends, welcome to WebCham. In this video, I'm going to discuss aggregation functions in DAX. Okay, let's see what is actually aggregation function. So whenever you have to calculate a scalar value meaning the value without magnitude, okay, such as count, mean, max, average. So these kind of values, if you get or if you are able to find from the column of table, okay, so that kind of functions or that kind of operations we can consider as an aggregation. Okay, and to perform this kind of calculations, Power BI has aggregation function which help us to get the aggregated value. Okay, it is not like that aggregate meaning the only average and all. So average comes there, count comes there, then max, mean, sum, then even product of that column. Even Power BI has more functions to use the conditions also while performing the aggregations. So we will see one by one how all these are going to work. Okay. So in case of Power BI, you need to create a measure whenever you have to calculate the aggregated value. Okay. So if I say average, okay, and just I have given the name to the measure. Okay. And here I'm going to perform the average formula. Okay. And you can use this. Even if you look at the formula, it says that it returns the average mean of all the numbers in column. Okay, it will return the mean of numbers in column. So if I say I wanted to see the mean of sales amount column, any column you can select. Okay, so this will perform the aggregation operation. If I select the visuals to see the numbers, whether this is working or not, so you can see, yes, it is able to return me the number. Right. Now let's see how we can use the next function, that is what average A. And what is the difference between average A and average function? We will discuss. Okay. So average function is not able to handle the text or non-numeric values. So if you have values in text format, okay, in that case, what you can do, you can use the average A function to perform the aggregation. So simply I will copy this and we'll go for the new measure, and nothing different, only change is average A. Okay. Here in this case, both the functions will produce the same result because there is no difference or there are no text type values in this column. That's why we can see. But in case if there are text type values, okay, average function is not going to handle that values. So meaning when you use only average functions, and if that column has text type values, that function, meaning the average function, will return blank. It is not going to perform the aggregation. Okay. Even in case of if the column contains logical values or empty cells, those values are ignored in case of the average. Even cells with the value 0 are included here in this case of average. But in case of average X, it is able to handle the non-numeric data types according to the few rules. Okay. If the values that evaluates to true, if is there any value that is Boolean value, if the value is true, it will count as a 1. If the value is false, okay, in that case, meaning the value that evaluates to false, it will not count that value. Even value that contain non-numeric text. Non-numeric text meaning characters or even empty text will not be counted in case of average A. That's why I said average A is able to handle the text type values, but in case of average functions, it will simply return blank if the value text type values are there in column. Okay, so this is how it works. Let's say sometime you may want to get the average based on the few conditions. Based on the few conditions. Okay. Like if I say, okay, I want the aggregated value, meaning the average of sales amount for only product called bike, meaning the product category called bike. Okay, so in that case you are able to use the expressions. That is what, okay, let me hit the enter button. That is not showing me default suggestions. Okay, so if I say average X and then it says table, it asks for the table, I will say the sales data, meaning I will select the table sales, and here, okay, if I say category, so sales category, okay, you will be able to apply the filter from the same table itself. Okay, you will not allowed to use the relationships and apply the filter based on the another table's column. So this is not going to work. So you need the column in the same table itself to perform the or to use the expressions that evaluates for the considering the row or not. Okay, if I say product category is equal to bikes, meaning the sales category. Okay, in case of here, this is not actually sales category. I bring the category column from product table into sales. Okay, that's why. And if I select this, now here in this case, okay, this is a table. Okay, but this is a condition. Based on this condition, okay, we have to perform the aggregation. But aggregation of what? Right, aggregation of what? So either you can enter the column name or you can use the conditional statements also. So if I say, okay, here expression that returns a column based on the conditions, okay, we can do that also. But if I use the sales amount, okay, first I will show in this way. So if I use the sales amount, and let me add one more card here. This is average X. If I bring the average X here, so you will be able to see the same amount of value here. But so far, this is giving the same number because we have not applied the filter. How to apply the filter? Okay, let's say if I would like to use the logical expressions here to filter the rows that are considered for the calculation. So what I will do, I will say sales. Okay, instead of this sales, I will say category. Category is equal to bikes. In that case, it should return the sales amount. Okay, so I'm using the conditional expressions, right? If for any row in my table, if the sales category is equal to bike, sales is a table name, category is a column name, even though that is coming from the product category table. If I say sales amount, if this is true, I would like to return here sales amount of that row. Otherwise, I can return the 0. Okay, and in case of average X, obviously this is not going to consider 0 and it will return. Okay, so now you can see that this has dropped. This value has dropped. Okay, even you can do this for another categories also. Okay, let's see if this is product category. If I come to the category of the product table, there is something called category. Okay. Okay. So this is what my category components, bikes, clothing. These are the categories I have. Fine. So this is how aggregation performed with the help of average formulas in DAX. So now let's move ahead with the next aggregation formula, that is what count. Okay. There may be a situation that you may need to see the count of any column. Okay. So what we can do, we can get the count by simply using the count function. If I select this measure, okay, even I created all the measures in this table, but it is fine. Okay, now I will use this table. We can select the table and create the measures. Fine. So I will simply say count, and then count is equal to count. I'm just going to use the simple count function. And if I say day name, so this will return me the count of values. Okay, no matter what type of values are there. It counts the actually number of rows in the specified column. Okay. Count the number of rows in a specified column that contains non-black values, meaning the value, if the values are blank, this is not going to count. Okay, let's see how many values are there. If I add this card here, and if I bring the value, so 1280 number of values are there, number of rows are there in my data. Okay. Now if I bring another card, okay, and instead of this count, only count, I want functions. Okay, even there is a requirement in such a way that okay, it should count, okay, all the values. Meaning, what is difference between count A and count A? So basically, when we use the count, it is not going to count the Boolean values, Boolean data types. Okay, so if you want to count that kind of data also, then what we can do, we can use count A. So only count if you use, that is not going to support the Boolean expression, Boolean output, Boolean data types for the count. Okay, but yes, in case of count A, this function is able to handle values and value, meaning the Boolean values also. Okay, let me say this is my sales data country. Okay, anything we can select. So earlier I used day name. Right. So here also. So here in the both the cases, we will see the same number. Number will not change because there is no Boolean value in this column. But in case if the values are there, then it is going to affect. Otherwise, numbers will same. So it is always better to use the count A. Then there is something called count X. Based on the condition, if you want to get the count, like we performed the conditional output or conditional average. So similarly, we have something called count AX. Okay, so in that case, we can use count AX. If I say count AX, again, this counts the number of rows. Okay, when the value of that column evaluates to the non-zero. And if I use the count AX, okay. Let me say, but yes, here it is asking first table name. So I will pass calendar as table name. Okay. Then I have selected the table. Okay. So basically it is going to count the number of rows. But how? Based on the expressions and what kind of expressions you pass, even we have seen in case of average also. You can use any kind of expressions to filter the data from this calendar table. Okay. So let me say if the calendar dot date. Okay, so if I'm just going to build the logic calendar dot year is greater than, okay, and let's say this is 2003. Okay, if it is greater than 2003, then I wanted to count. But what do you want to count? Okay, I wanted to count the day name. Okay, so you can select any column, okay, based on the requirement. Otherwise, it should return. Okay, so if this expression at very first place, okay, if this evaluates for the text type data, okay, and it is going to count, then you can write here as a blank. Okay, so blank is a function that can be adjusted with any type of values. Now let's let's see how the count is, meaning how many number of rows are there, which is for the year 2003 and above. So 366 rows are there. Okay, so what I used, okay, if it is greater than 2003. Okay, so this is how count expression we can. In case of expression, even you can use the functions which returns the tables also, and not like that. Okay, it is necessary to return the table, because anyways it is going to count the rows, not the values. Then if you want to check the blank values from any specific column, so you can check, okay, if I go to the product table and if I show you I have blank values in one of the tables, that is what my product table. And if I go here, okay, so here in case of status, in case of end date, there are blanks, right? So I can take the count of blank values here. If I go and if I say new measure, and let's say count blank. Okay, so this is what the formula. I always use the formula name itself to measure name. Okay, so here I will say end date, right? End date of product. So this is how I selected. Now this is going to return me the count of only blank values, not the actual values are there. Okay, exactly this works opposite to this earlier count operation. Right? Earlier we were using count only, and count only was there to count the values. It was not counting the blank values. So here, if you want to see the how many blank values are there in column, so you can use this count blank. Then there is one more function. Okay, if you want to see the count of table, okay, obviously anyways if you take this count and if the values are blank, okay, if the values are blank, okay, let's try this with the another column. If I use the end date column here, so you will see, instead of this you will see how many columns are there. Okay, if I say end date, and what will be the count? Okay, so 200 count, right? And in case of, okay, if I go to the table, you can see the how many number of rows are there. So 397 rows are there. And if you look at my result, so in end date column we have 200 values and 197 blanks, right? So this is perfectly matching, meaning this is working fine. Now either values are blank or irrespective of values, okay, if you want to see the count of rows in a table, so there is a function called count rows. Okay, so that is not going to check for the values. Okay, earlier count function was checking for the blank and non-blank values, but here if you use the count rows, this is not going to check for a rows, sorry, not for the values of that columns. Okay, instead of that it will take the table name only. It is not asking you to enter the column name. Okay, so it takes the table name and it is going to give us the count of rows in that table. So 397 rows are there. Okay, if you want to use the count function with the expression, yes, there is a way. Even you can use the count function with expression also, this count function. So there is we have seen count a and count ax. Similarly, we have something called count x also. Okay, count x also. So if I go and okay, I wanted to see the count of end dates for the category called, let's say, bike. So what I will do, I will use x. Count x, it asks first table. I will say product. Product is my table, and I would like to get the count of end date, but how? Based on the condition. So I can use the expression here. So if I say if product category is equal to bikes, okay, this should return this. Otherwise it should return blank. And anyways, blank is not counted, right, in count function. So this will, okay. So I need to modify this as a count x. We cannot create the multiple measures with the same name. That's why. Product, if the product category, count x. Okay, so this is evaluating count. If I bring the count x, so you can see that the count is changed, right? So now it is showing for the only number of rows or number of values from product end date for the bike category. So this is how we can use the filters, expressions. Okay. Now, if you want to see the distinct count, meaning if the column has many values, obviously categories are limited. And if you want to see the how many distinct values are there in that column, so there is something called distinct count function in DAX. So I will go and I will use that distinct count here. Okay. Count, and I will say distinct count, and then category, product category, I will say. Now let's select one of the, okay, where is my distinct count? Okay, see here it is. Just bring up. So you can see that I have only 4 distinct values in my product category column. So like this, you can get the distinct value count from any specific column. Then there is distinct count no blank also. So by default, if you use the distinct count blank function, sorry, distinct count function, so this is going to consider if the blank values are there, this is going to consider that blank as a 1. So you can use distinct count no blank also. So there is distinct count no blank, which is going to, which does not count the blank values. Okay, so this function, distinct count function, by default, it counts the null values as a 1. But in case of the distinct count no blank, you can ignore the blank count, blank value count. So that is what the purpose. Fine. Then we have something called max function, max a. So these functions are going to help us with the maximum value from specific column. So if I use max, okay, let me go and create the measure for the max. If I say max is equal to, if I use the max, okay, and the column name or scalar, okay, so I am going to use the column name here. I wanted to see the maximum sales amount. If I hit the enter button, so it will return me the maximum sales amount. And if I bring it here, Okay, so it says 3.58K. This is not a sum. Okay, this is just the amount from the column. Even in case of max, okay, it is not like that max we can use for the uh, numbers only. Okay, so we can get the max for other type of data like date type of data. Okay, we can get the max value, but how? Okay, if you pass here get date, so if I say calendar date, okay, and let's see what is the maximum value. So it says this is what the maximum value in my column. So we can use max on the date type data or number type data. It's up to you. Even there is something called max A also in this, and we can use max A to get the same output. Okay, instead of this, even creating new measure, I will edit this formula, and this is going to give the same result also. Then let's understand what is the difference between max and max A. So let's say max A function is you are not able to compare the text values. In case of max, you can use, okay, if I pass the text values here, and if I say product category, okay, so this is not going to consider, it will return the zero since no values are there. Okay, so max A is going to handle only the numbers and text type value, sorry, date type values. But in case of if you want to see the output for max of text, so you can use only max function. Okay, and it returns the value. Okay, so this is how mean max works. Okay, even in case of mean, okay, so there is something called max x also. If I use max x, so it allows you to give the expressions. Okay, and based on the expression the way we have given in earlier functions like count x and average x. So here the way we have performed there, we can use this. Even here, based on the conditions, okay, if I would like to see the maximum value for any specific category like components, so I will be able to use these expressions. Okay, if sales category, since I use the sales table, it will not allow me to use the columns from another table. That's why it is not giving the suggestions. Okay, so components. Okay, if this is for the components, I would like to see the maximum value of sales amount column. Okay, and then I can return this. Okay, so obviously 0 is not going to return. Okay, but in this case, okay, so it says for the component the value is 0. For the components category, value is 0. Okay, so let's see, there is another category, clothing. Okay, and if I enter this, so this shows the maximum value for the specific category. Okay, for the component there is no record, then if it shows the maximum value as a 0. Okay, this is how max x function works. Even similarly, you can create the mean functions. And the way we have seen max, it is very similar to the mean also. So here you can compare two values. Okay, even in case of max also you can compare. If I say 100, 100 and 200. Okay, so it will return the minimum value. Okay, out of these two scalar values. So it has ability to compare. Okay, so let me say this, and obviously this should return me 100 as a minimum value, right? So if I select, this is returning me the 100. Even if you select the column also, that is also fine. If I say sales amount, okay, so it shows 2. Even if I use mean A, even that is also mean A, and yes, so mean and mean A, if you look at the definition, the way we open the formula, okay, here you get the hint what it is going to consider, what it is not going to consider. It says that does not ignore logical values and text also. Okay, so in that case, in case of mean only, it was ignored. Okay, that indicates the difference between two. Even if you want to use this based on the expressions, you can get the minimum value based on the expressions. Okay, I am just copying this expression instead of writing the entire expression once again. And here, instead of max, I will say mean, and this is going to give me the result. Okay, for the clothing category, minimum value is 0. Even if I check for the bikes, okay, so for this category also, this shows the 0 as a minimum value of sales amount column. So this is about the mean, max, mean A, max X, and mean X. Okay. Then let's see what is the next function. So next function is if you want to get the sum of column. Okay, sum of column. So obviously, when you have to perform the summations, only numbers are considered. Okay, numbers that are considered. So if you want to get the sum, so you can use sum function. If I go and create the new measure, which shows me sum is equal to, if I say sum of, and then here you can pass the column name. So if I say sales amount, I would like to see the total sales amount. Okay, so you can get the sum of entire column. Okay, sum of entire column. If I add new measure and if I use this, so this shows me the total sum. Even if you want to see the sum of X, okay, very similar, but yes, X, when you see, even you may have observed that if there is a X, it allows us to put the conditional expression. See, if I say sum of X, so here it asks first the table name, and then it allows you to define the expression. So it is not like that. Okay, since I am using if only as an expression everywhere, but yes, you can use the table expressions and all, even another filter expressions from Power BI. Okay, so if I say sales, okay, sales category, if sales category is equal to bike, since I first need to mention the what to return. Okay, and if this condition is true, it should return me sales amount. Okay, so I will say sales amount, and if this condition is false, it should say 0. So 0 is not going to affect the sum, right? So now you will see sum of sales for only bike category. This is what the sum of sales for the bikes. Okay, so this is how aggregation functions works in Power BI. Okay, if you want to get the product of column values, you can use the product. Very similar, it works very similar. No need to discuss that even. Okay, I hope you like the content of this video. Thank you so much for watching the video. Have a nice day. Please do not forget to subscribe WebJam.